Welcome back to iPeer tutorials. Today we're going to cover how to create events. Once you've added students and you've put them into groups, you obviously want to create evaluations and evaluation events in order to be able to have the students evaluate each other. Now, it's important in iPeer to understand that evaluations are separate from evaluation events. Usually I explain this to people as it's the difference between you creating a test and then you passing out the test. All right. So we're going to have to cover both things in iPeer. So initially I want to show you how to create the evaluation event. Now, this is obviously not normally the order you'd do it in. Normally you'd create an evaluation and then an event. But I think that this will help you to understand the process a little bit better if we do it in this order. So from the course homepage, we're going to come down here and click on Add Event. And of course, that will take us to the page for adding an evaluation event. It's a basic form. You just kind of go through and fill it out. Of course, you see your course has been selected from the drop-down menu at the top. You give your event a title. We're just going to call ours a midterm evaluation. You can give it a description if you want. It's not necessary. Most people don't. Down below here is where you actually select a template type. You'll learn about that a little bit later, but it's important to understand that you create different types of evaluation. So you want to select the type of evaluation that you've already created, and then from that type, a list will auto-populate in this other drop-down menu, and you can find your evaluation and you can select it. Now, if you'd like, you can click on Preview, and it will give you a preview on the basis of some demo students, not your students, of what this particular evaluation will look like when your students log in. It'll show that to you for for a given student in a group where they're evaluating 3 other students. So that's the way that looks. All right, we can come back over here and we can continue filling out the evaluation event form. Self-evaluation is whether or not any self-evaluation sections will be added to the evaluation. Comments required. Notice it does not apply to mixed evaluations. Again, we'll cover that in a little while, but for the other types of evaluations, if you want comments to be required, you can enable or disable that. Auto-release results what this does, if you enable auto-release results, is as soon as the date for results to be released to students arrives, the system will automatically send an email out to all the students saying you can now log in and you can view your results. If it's disabled, then you will have to log in and you will have to say, okay, I have noted that everything I want done with this particular evaluation and evaluation event has taken place. You've looked at all the results yourself or whatever it is you want to do, and then you can release the results to the students. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail as well later, but just remember this is where you can select that results are automatically released or not. Below that, you see the student result mode. Now, there's a little explanation here that tells you, but this is pretty simple. When students fill out comments as a part of an evaluation, a basic mode will mean that the students can see all of the evaluations that have been done about them, but they won't be able to see the comments. A detailed student result mode means that the students can see the comments. So the idea here is when you create an evaluation, if you want your students to fill out comments, but you want those comments to only be visible to you, then you want a basic mode. If you want those comments visible to the student they're written about, then you want a detailed view. All right. So then just below that, we have this long list of blank boxes. And these are actually dates. Now, filling these out in iPeer is a little bit finicky. It's simple, but it's a little bit finicky and takes some getting used to. So I want to show you how to do that. All right, so the first thing that you'll do is come up here to due date, and a due date is exactly what it sounds like. It's the date that the students have to, or are supposed to anyway, finish this evaluation by. Later, when we add late penalties, it's the date that penalties will be calculated from. Now, when you add a date, a due date, or any of these dates to an iPeer evaluation event, you're not just adding a date, you're adding a time. Now, when you click in one of these boxes, this calendar will pop up, and you can set whatever date you want. So if you wanted to, theoretically, you could create all of the evaluations for a course at the beginning of the semester, but you could set all of the dates for when these things are due, when they're visible, when the results are visible, and all that sort of thing for your students, all at the beginning of the semester, and just be done with it. And then at the end of the semester, log back into iPeer and be able to check all the results. In any case, when you click on one of these boxes, this calendar pops up. You select the date. In this case, I'll just, select February 18th. And then before I click done, I want to set the time. You'll notice that it defaulted to 0, and it goes all the way up to 11:59. That's midnight from the 17th to the 18th, all the way to 11:59 on the 18th. So select whatever time you want and then click done. And then we'll do the same thing for the evaluation when the evaluation is released. Now, what this means is this is when the evaluation gets passed out. So I go through the same process of selecting dates. And if my due date is the 18th, maybe I want them to have a week to fill it out. So I make it available to them on the 11th at whatever time I choose. Here I'll set it for 1 a.m. on the 11th. And then I make it available for them until whatever date I choose. Now, if the due date is the 18th, maybe I want to give them an extra week after the due date to fill it in. And there may be a penalty for that, but we'll set that up later. The next set of boxes sets up when the results are released. So if my due date was the 18th and they had until the 25th, maybe I want a couple of days later, they can log in to see all the results, the evaluations that were done about them. And maybe I'll only give them a week or so to be able to review those results. Now, what this is going to mean is that after March 6th, after the week is up, that they've been able to go in and see the results, those results will no longer be visible to them. When they log in, they won't be able to see the results listed on in their iPeer account. You'll be able to see them because you manage the course. And if you want the students to be able to see them, you can go back in and make them visible for longer periods of time. Or if you always want them visible, you can just go in and make the date they're available until, release the results until the end of the semester or something like that, if that's important to you. All right, so the next thing we have is an email reminder. And what this means is however often I want from the time that the evaluation is released, how many days do I want in between the system sending out automatic email reminders? So I might have it done every 3 days or every day or every 4 days, however often you want. And the system, like I said, will send out these reminders automatically. All right. So the last thing we do is need to select both groups. We can either, we want to select any and all groups that this evaluation is relevant for. So theoretically, you could create separate evaluations for every group and only make them available to that group when you set up the evaluation event. But here, of course, most people are just going to make one evaluation and make it available and relevant for all of their groups. So that's what you're selecting here. All right, so to round things out, we can now add late penalties based on the due date that we selected earlier. Remember, we gave them an extra week to fill it out. So maybe after 2 days beyond the due date, we can select whatever percentage we want. I don't know, maybe we say after 2 days, 20% gets deducted from your grade, or 10% or whatever. You can add as many of these penalties as you want based on however many days late that they fill it in or that they turn in the evaluation, and you can select whatever percentages you want. When you're done, you click submit and it will take you to the events page, and you can see that you've created your evaluation event anyway. If you click on the name of the evaluation event, it'll bring you to this page, which gives you all the summary details of this particular evaluation event. If I right click in the shaded area, I of course I can click on view event. I can edit event if I want to change things. I can export the results of the event into Excel. I can delete the event. All kinds of things I can do from that little pop-up menu there. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is look at the evaluations themselves, the evaluations that the evaluation event essentially passes out. So we can come up here and click on the evaluation tab, and we'll see here the page that has a list of all of my evaluations. Now, I don't have any here because under this particular account, I haven't created any, but I want to go through and show you the differences between the types of evaluations that I can create, what they are and how they work. And then I want to show you how to create each one of these specific types of evaluations. So let's start by looking at simple evaluations. So I'll just select one at random here. And simple evaluations, this is what one sort of looks like. And basically, there's this relative weight scale here. There's a certain amount of points that have to be allocated, and I distribute them amongst the group members. And if I had extra points to be distributed, I could click this distribute, and according to the information I had already given iPeer, it would redistribute those points. So anyway, it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It's very uncommon for most people to use this particular evaluation, but so be it. Anyway, the next one is a rubric evaluation. And rubric evaluations, if I select one of these at random, these are a little bit more complex, but they're still very simple. What I do up here at the top, you'll see I have some options of things we'll go over when we create one, but it's basically a matrix. There's criteria on the left and a scale on the top. And for each particular student in my group, I select these, I assign them a place on the scale for each one of these criteria. So again, very simple and straightforward, but a little bit more complex than the simple evaluation. All right, so the next evaluation that we're going to look at is a mixed evaluation. This is far and away the most popular evaluation that gets used. And if we look at one of these at random, you can kind of see why. You have the ability to establish a lot of different types of questions. Here you can see things where they can type in a paragraph for an answer, various scales where they can assign different types of points to each of the students. When we start building one, you'll see that it's a much more flexible style of evaluation, and that's why it's so popular. All right. Anyway, so if we go back and we look at the last type, we have a survey, and this is exactly what it sounds like. It's a list of questions, and they can and answers can be typed in. You can have different types of ways that answers can be given. You can have not just the ones where they type in answers, but you can have radio buttons that are selected and all kinds of options. We'll look at that in more detail here in just a little bit. All right. So the last thing that you'll have on the evaluation types are this emailer and email templates. Essentially, what you can do under email templates is create a static email that you have access to if you wanted to send emails to your students through iPeer. Hardly anybody does this, but I just thought that you should know that it is available to you. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is to look at how to create each one of these evaluations. So for simple evaluations, you simply click on Simple Evaluations, and in the top right, you click on Add Simple Evaluation, and then you fill out the form, a name, a description if you want one, and remember, it just distributes a certain amount of points across the members. So you decide how many points you want available per member, and you type that in here, that number in here. Here you have public and private. Notice if I click Save, go to Save this evaluation, it won't save it until I select either public or private. As a general rule, I suggest making all of these evaluations public. Essentially, the difference is whether or not others can see the evaluation that you've created and use it for their own course. However, what's more important is that if you ask for help in making changes to your evaluations, your evaluation events, things like that, troubles can arise if you haven't marked these public. So unless you have a really good reason for making it private, I suggest that you make it public. All right, so once I do make it public, I click Save, and it takes me to this screen, and I can see that the evaluation was added successfully. And if I want to find my evaluation, I can use these filters here to find my specific evaluation. I can click on it and see what how it works and what it looks like. Alternatively, I can just click on Evaluation up here on the main menu, and it will take me to my evaluations page, and I can see my evaluations listed here. All right. So let's move on to rubrics. If I click rubrics and click Add Rubric, I have a simple menu here. Now, the way that this works is I, of course, give it a name, just like all the other evaluations. And then I select a level of mastery. Now, the level of mastery, the idea here is, think of a scale like 1 to 10. This is the scale that students are going to be rated on. And so I select whatever level that I want up to 10. And then I can name each one of those levels of mastery later on. I'll be able to name those whatever I want to name them. Then I select a number of criteria. And that's pretty self-explanatory. I make it public, and then I decide if I want a 0 mark. And basically what this does is if I say I do want a 0 mark, if I check this box, it means that the first level of mastery is worth 0 points. So right now I've got 4 levels of mastery. If I say I don't want a 0 mark, then each level of mastery will be worth 1 point. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, and 4, respectively. But if I say I want a 0 mark, then if a student is given the lowest score for any given criteria, then they'll receive 0 points for that criteria. Instead of receiving 1 point, they'll receive 0 points. So that's basically how that works. All right, so that'll make more sense in a few minutes, but once I do that, I click Next, and up pops my rubric. Now, remember, since I selected the 0 mark, this first level of mastery is worth 0 points. And then I each one after that is worth respectively 0.33 points, 0.67 points, and 1 point. And then I can adjust the value for each one of these using the criteria weight. All right, so as I said, I can label each of the criteria. So maybe I want did the student give good input to group discussions? And I can do the same thing for the levels of mastery. Instead of them just being worth a certain number of points, I can try to prime the students psychologically by giving certain descriptions here. So maybe for each criteria, the student did not do this well. Maybe they did this. I don't know. Maybe they did this poorly. Maybe they did this well. Maybe they did this really well. I don't know. Whatever it is that you want to do, the idea here is you're defining what each of these levels of mastery actually mean. All right. And then that's what these point values will then apply to in the minds of the students. So like I said, I can come over here to the criteria weight. I can then say 2, or I can say, 6, and that determines how many points are available, or at least how many points are available for that particular criterion. And then down here, I can see the total number of points available for the entire rubric. So if I change this criteria to 15, then the total marks goes up. And I can obviously fidget with this, as I create criteria, I can change weights and all that sort of thing. All right. So once I'm happy with all of this, I come up here and I click save. And once I click save, you'll see that it shows me that the rubric was added successfully. There it is. I can click on it. I can look at it. It'll show me kind of what it looks like. Now, if I do this and I notice that I made a mistake, I want to change something, or maybe I didn't finish it the first time around. If I go back, I can right click in this area, get my pop-up menu and click edit rubric, and it'll let me make adjustments. All right, so next we're going to look at mixed evaluations. So add mixed evaluation. Again, give it a name, select public here, 0 marks. Here, 0 marks will only apply to Likert questions, which we'll look at in a minute, but 0 marks work exactly the same way as they did on the rubrics. Self-evaluation, what this does, if I click it, you'll see it pops up a section down here for self-evaluation where I can create an additional set of questions for the student to try to evaluate themselves in addition to their peers. But adding questions to it and everything works exactly the same way. All right, so what I do in order to add questions is I come to this drop-down menu and I select the type of question that I want to add, and then I simply click add. So I'll add a score drop-down question. I click add. I can type in a question, so whatever my question is, and then I can give specific sets of instructions for this question. These are not instructions for the entire evaluation, just for this specific question. And then I can come down here and make the question either required or optional by checking this box or not checking this box, and then I've made this question. So then what I can do is come back up to the drop-down menu. I can select a different type of question, and I can click add, and I see that it shows up down here. And I go through the exact same process. I simply type in, whatever my question is, and any instructions, and set up whether or not it's required or not. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering, well, what's the difference in some of these different types of questions that I can add? The first one that I added was a score drop-down question, and you'll see a little description that tells you basically all this does is take the number of students in the group, multiplies that number by 10, and then allows the student to distribute points amongst their fellow group members, using up to, so if there's 6 members, there's 60 points available, and they can distribute up to 60 points however they wish across their members, across their group members. And that's essentially the same as the simple evaluation, but it just goes about it a little bit different way. The other question that I put down was a sentence question. And a sentence question is exactly what it sounds like. I type in whatever my question is, and in response to that, students will have a small space in order to type a one-sentence answer. All right, it's pretty simple. Okay, so the next type of question that I can add is a paragraph question, and this works exactly the same way, except that when the students are given the option to answer, they'll have space to type several sentences instead of just one. And then there's the Likert question, and these are very, very popular. Likert questions are a little bit more complex to understand, though. So I type in whatever my question is. I give specific instructions for this question. I make it required or not required. And then I establish how many marks that this question will be worth. Now, there's a description under here that explains how the marks work, but essentially the idea is that the marks work in relationship to the scale, right? So I can add as many scales as I want, and the scales can be just about anything. These are a lot like the levels of mastery in the rubric questions, right? But what I'm doing when I set up a certain number of marks is I'm distributing a certain number of points over the scales in the exact same way that I distributed points over the levels of mastery in the rubric questions. So for this question, for example, if I have 4 marks and I have four scales that I add in, then I'm distributing 4 points over these 4 scales. And so what might happen is I selected that Likert questions start with 0, and so then the first scale is worth 0, the second is worth a certain amount more, but the last scale will be worth 4 points. If I say Likert questions are not don't start with a 0 mark, then the first scale will be worth 1 point, the second scale worth 2 points, third worth 3 points, fourth worth 4 points, that sort of thing. All right. Now, here's an example. I might say the question might be, I don't know, did this group member, did they give good input in group discussions, right? Just like we did in the rubric question. I give those specific instructions for this question. I have 4 marks, so then my scales might be similar to the things I did under the rubric levels of mastery. I might have, well, they gave poor input, they gave mediocre input, maybe they gave good input, and maybe they gave outstanding input, whatever you want, right? But that basically tells me what each one of those, that allows me to prime for the students with what each point distribution will be worth. Okay. Now, when I create these, if I click this red button over here, you'll notice that question is moved to the top. So I can use the X to delete questions and the blue one to move them down. Basically, this allows me to manipulate the location of questions in a particular mixed evaluation. Okay, let me finish out by showing you how to make a survey evaluation. Go to Add Survey. Very small form here. I simply give my survey a name, and then I'll be able to select a template. Generally, you're not going to select a template. This uses somebody else's survey to input default questions for you to then go in and modify. So if you saw somebody else's survey that you really liked, you could basically copy it through this method. All right, so then I click Add Survey once I make it public, and then I need to, I can see that my survey has been saved, and then I need to right click on in the shaded area next to my survey, and I need to click Edit Questions. So that will take me to this page. I click Add Question. I'm not going to have any question templates to load. I'm just going to say no, where it asks me if this is a question that should be used as a template in the future. At least that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to choose a question type. You can see here I have several different question types. I think that they're all pretty self-explanatory as to how each question works. But then once I've selected a particular type of question, then I need to click Add Response. And what this will allow me to do for multiple choice or choose any of is to be able to establish precisely what options the student has to select from. And I can select however many I want. All right, so what that will then allow me to do is be able to click Save Question. I can go through that process to create however many questions I want for my survey, and that's how I create surveys. All right, so now having seen how you create an evaluation event and what each one of the evaluations are and how you create each one of the types of evaluations. To integrate the two, simply go back to and think back to this part of creating the evaluation event itself. Recall that what you were doing when you were making the evaluation event, at least at this point, was that you were selecting a evaluation template. So that's simple, rubric, mixed, survey. And then you were selecting from the auto-populated drop-down menu below it precisely which of those evaluations you wanted to select. So all you do when you get to this point is pick your evaluation type, whichever one that you created, probably a mixed evaluation. You select mixed evaluation here, and then in the auto-populated menu, you find the title of the evaluation that you created. You select that, and that will be the evaluation that gets, again, proverbially passed out to your students when this evaluation event pops up for them.